Hey everyone, it's Joe Glines here in Dallas, Texas.
Yeah, and Jackie here from Denmark.
And welcome to our 39th AutoHotkey Webinar. Yay!
Hey! Amazing number.
Yeah, the people that are first here, they're like, what is with these guys? So, you know, we love to, well, neither of us are coders. We love just saving time and helping other people save time, right? We're not making any money off of any of this. It's just a lot of fun. Yes. Thanks, Susan. Woo! And the ground rules, so everyone starts off, besides Jackie and I, muted, just because when there's more than two people talking at one time, it's mayhem, right? And so with two people, it's easy. If you have questions, then you can either use the chat or raise your hand, and we can stop and we can unmute you personally, individually at the time if you want to ask the question. This webinar is going to be a little more dynamic, I think, hopefully a little more feedback from people asking what in the world we're doing. But that's the whole plan here, is we start off muted and stuff.
Yeah.
I saw Chris's response there. Yeah, that was mine at the beginning. It was total mayhem, but and it was still, even though when I first started, it was still so helpful, right, that I just kept at it. It is amazing. And here, if you don't know it, we also do like podcasts, and Jackie and I do. We had a couple. Here's the last, I think, 6. We talked about the set timer. Jackie talked about using virtual desktops to hide programs. And then this is actually the UI automation one. That was the podcast where you walked through, I think I had, and I forget which script it was, but it was using the UI automation, and you walked through bit by bit. And so that's kind of what the second half of the webinar today, what we're going to do. And then we discussed digital workers. And then we had one on just what kind of default settings do you have on each script, right? What's your core normal default settings that you have when you have when you start a new script? And then we do have a couple courses in AutoHotkey. They're on Udemy. There's one for an intro to AutoHotkey, and then one on hot strings, which are, if you're not using them, start using them. They're super valuable. All right. And we always have a little script highlighter, and in this one, I just wanted to, I've mentioned this in several webinars, but someone had asked me at one point if I would mind sharing it, and so I did on YouTube, but I'll go ahead and share it again here. So, AutoHotkey is not secure, right? You save your files as a plain text file on your computer, and a lot of people don't like having their password stored as plain text in that main file, and of course, neither do I. So what I do is I use this script, and I think actually, let me see if I put it in this folder, and I'll just fire it up. Yeah. So oops, looks like there's something weird with it. Let's edit it. It looks like I had a little problem with I think somehow one of the lines got, was it 18, I think I said? Yeah, this moved up, I don't know how.
Should fix it.
Yeah. Now it's on 19.
Should still be okay.
Yeah. And I noticed, let me restart Studio. Studio was acting a little weird. It was a little sluggish earlier.
No.
Let me restart it and just see if that helps. Return.
What's it saying on the end?
Let me put back my hot. I think it's because is that it? No. GoSubs and encrypt user tool returns parameter should be blank except inside a function.
Oh, you're missing an open parenthesis or a curly bracket, so the loop doesn't have an opening curly bracket.
Oh, that's interesting. Can it go there, or does it have to go in there? I never remember the loop.
I can't remember. I think it needs to be on the second line when it's,
There we go. Yeah, that's one of the little funky things with AutoHotkey. So here is, if I had my password, and I'll just say my password, this is where running it here. When I hit OK, this is the encoded value. So this is the value I will save in my plain text file, right, that I'm running. And then what I do is I put my decrypt function somewhere else separate from my script. And that way, if someone gets that script, they don't know my password, right? It's not a secure, super secure way, but it adds a little security, right? That way this thing isn't stored in it. I typically actually store this in an INI file that's not even under like my Dropbox. It's somewhere else entirely. And that way, if I share like everything under this folder, they still don't have my password. They have to have that other file in a whole separate folder in a certain location. Then they have to have my decrypt function. And then also I built this constant here that anybody can change. And so now you can just change that to a different number. And then, of course, unless you know that number, it doesn't work for you either. And then the next line here, when we run it again, it's going to take this value and decrypt it. And it takes it back to, this is what I typed. It's my password.
Yeah.
So that is, and by the way, so we, after the webinar, we'll maybe tonight or tomorrow morning, I'll send out a link to all the resources that we share in here. Although this one's not going to be a lot of code. I could probably throw them in the chat almost. But this is a fun way to help kind of somewhat protect your code. Okay. I was just reading up on the chat here, but yeah, let me know if you have any questions on that. Again, it's not perfectly secure, but it's simple, easy way to help make your code a little more secure. Now we're off into our coding. Actually, let me just minimize that for now. So I wrote, and it's kind of funny. I went across and searched all of my AutoHotkey files, and I thought that I would be able to find an example where before I had really started using functions, that I could go ahead and show the example. We'd work through it. Unfortunately, which I know I had written them originally, but it's been like 10 years or more where I've been using AutoHotkey now, that I didn't have an example anymore where I should have used functions instead of using GoSubs. So I wrote a little thing here just as an example, right? So in here at the beginning, let me exit out of that other script. We're going to start off, and here, it's just saying only allow one instance of this script. These two are my hotkeys. This one will reload the script, and this one's going to run everything beneath it. And then first we're going to set a value of X to 0. And then it's going to come in here and do a tooltip saying, hey, this is before we do any GoSubs, right? So here are the 3 GoSubs. This is pre-GoSub. The value of X is, and it's going to be, of course, 0. And we're going to set a sleep to 3300. It's just telling you this here, but it's right here. And then we're going to fall into here. Then there's the 3 GoSubs. And so it's going to jump to the first one, jump down into here. It's going to increment. It's going to add 50 to X. And then display the value and also tell you the sleep. So notice we have it here and here. This is us, again, telling us how much it is. This is the actual value. And then each one of those is like that. So let me go ahead and kick this off and run it, and we'll see it. So here's the pre-GoSub, value 0, sleeps 3300. And then now it's at 50, it sleeps 3000, and then we're in the middle. And then finally we're at the end, and we're up to 550, and it sleeps 4000. Right? So there's nothing, quote unquote, wrong with this script, other than if we put it into functions, it can be much more efficient, especially around being able to maintain the code in the long run. So, and Jackie, feel free to chime in here with me. I was going to walk through how I normally, when I see the pattern of like how I start adapting my code into a function.
Yeah. I'd say the thing that GoSubs and function don't share is that what a GoSub is, it goes to something.
Yeah, a label.
Yeah, it goes to a label, and what I'm thinking is GoSub. It's like it's going deeper in your code somewhere, and then it's gonna come back up. And that's what it is compared to like a go-to, where you would only go down, but you wouldn't ever come back up.
On its own.
Yeah, exactly. You'd need to return in some way. But with the GoSub, you have that. And that's why GoSubs and functions are so intertwined, because you'd call the function, the thread would move to the function code, and then it would return from the function and continue on.
Yeah.
So yeah.
And the simplest difference, it's not the only by far, but the way I think of it is a GoSub I can do just like Jackie said. They both go to a place and do some stuff and return back. The biggest difference to me when the GoSub versus the function is, with the function, I can pass a parameter, right? I can do more, but the main difference is I can actually pass some parameters to the thing I'm doing, where the GoSub, you're not doing that at all. All right, so let's go ahead and start converting this bad boy. Let's see here. I'm trying to think if we can go ahead and we'll do it in front of this even. So I'm going to move this down, and we'll still start off with x equaling 0. Actually, let's start off with, this will help us break it up of knowing where we are. So x, we're going to assign x to 0. Now this first, so actually that I shouldn't have done that one, because we're going to come back to that one. We're going to start with this one. What I like to do is I'll copy this, but I'm going to make it, let's see, the thing this is doing, I try to name it similar to what we're doing. So it'll be like add, display, and sleep. So this is where we'll put our parameters, but right now I'm not going to worry about that. And I'm going to take this bracket and put it, and we can get rid of this return now. I'm going to put that there. Right, but you know what? We'll have that here so it doesn't fall through later. So right now we've created a function. We're not passing any parameters to it, right? This is nothing. It would still jump. Well, sorry, we need to call it to jump down to it, but this is on its own. And let's go ahead and do that then. Let's put this to here. Now that is actually going to call that function. So when we hit this, it's going to jump into here and do this stuff, right? But the first thing that I say is like, oh, you know what? The like this sleep, it changes in each one of these calls, right? So the sleep here is 3,300, and here's 3,000, 3,200, 4,000, right? So that would be great to have sleep as a parameter that we can alter as we call that function. So I'm going to add, I'll call it sleepy, or let's do sleep time. Sleep time. That's in the calling of it. But so now that I've added that first parameter, I'm going to come in here and say, actually, let's put this as sleep time here, in here. So that's sleep time also. Does that make sense? And let's go ahead and kick this off and run it. Why did that not jump in there? Oops, shouldn't that have jumped in there, Jackie?
Yeah.
So let's see.
I don't think that it's...
Okay, so it got there.
Yeah. But you ain't passing any sleep time, so it's going so fast that you ain't seeing it.
Yeah, sorry. Right, I should have typed a value here. So this is, in this case, it's, let's say 3,300. Thank you. There we go. And so now that actually worked the way that we were hoping to, right? And so we've added one, but the second one is this part here, this message, I'm at start and the value is X, right? So that's kind of the message each one of these. So let's add the message. Actually, not there. Let's add it here. Oops, not quotes. So that is going to be a new parameter. And here, I'm going to cut that. Oops. So I'm going to say message. Actually, since it's doing that way. So message, and then and now up in here in the call, that's why I cut it instead of deleting it. So we're going to pipe this value into here and use it as the variable here, then that's going to show up here. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So I'm at start. What if we said I'm at Joe, and we run it? So notice it updated here, right? So now we have, let's go back to start. And value is, and of course now the last one is we're adding, this is one where it gets a little tricky, is that we want to increment X, and this is where, functions are great, but they are a little more complicated. The scope of the function of all the variables inside it they're local, right, by definition, unless you change them. So we can either pass X to it. We can either make X global up here and it'll be available and we can add straight to it, or we can use a byref command and have it add to it. Or the third option was, no, I'm sorry, I guess I confused the two. We can have it global and we can work with it. We could use a by reference and it'll update the original, or we can just return back we can do the math inside of it and return back a new value and add it to it. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
But let's pick one. Let's use the, we'll return the value. So let's bring in X. So we're going to bring in X as a parameter. Why is that red? Seems weird. And here we're going to pass X there. And now, let's see. So X comes in, X50. This will work inside here, but it wouldn't at right now, right, Jackie? This would break because it's not going to keep the value after we add it, right?
It wouldn't really break, but it wouldn't.
Yeah, I'm sorry.
It wouldn't return anything. It would show the new value, but
inside here, right?
Yeah.
Outside here, it won't have the value, but inside here it could. But so let's add a return of X, and what we'd have to do here is say X equals that. Now X will get updated, right? That's how we can avoid the issue. So I'm going to run this, and so the value is, so now notice the value is 50 because we added 50 to it, right? So so X50, sleep, return, 12. I think that's, is there anything else that we would that we can remove from the GoSub and put into the parameters? I think those are the three things that make sense.
I'd say this is a good way of doing it.
Okay.
Again, there's other methods of the exact same thing, but this is one of the simpler ways of doing it. And to me, the messages down below were pretty similar. So I might have only changed the word start.
Yeah. Okay.
As the message instead of I am at start and value is, but that's just whatever.
No, that's a good point.
People like. But again, it will work this way, and you could, of course, use like a super global, or you could make the scope of the function go global, or you could, as you said yourself, use by ref on the X value and stuff like that. But in overall, this is a simple way of converting a GoSub into a function. And this is then the power.
Right, exactly.
That you're now actually adding, right? Because you've added the same line 4 times. You're making small adjustments.
Whoop. Yeah.
And
there was one we didn't do. It's the value we're adding. This 50, because sometimes it's 50.
Oh yeah, if you wanted to add more than 50, yeah.
So this is why it's important to me. This is why I don't try to do it all in one pass. I'll do one thing at a time, and it's easier to spot. Like, well, wait a minute, this thing here, right? So value add, and now we're going to add that here. And up in here, let's say, so the first time we'll say 50, 100, it really doesn't matter, right? 200 and 500. So now I'm going to reload it and run it. So it starts off at 50, and then 150, then it should be 350, and then 850. Oh, you know what? And I didn't do is I didn't change the sleep times, right? So let's make this a little faster. We'll make that 4 seconds, and that one 2 seconds. So, and that's what Jackie was alluding to. Now this is the real power, right? No matter how many calls we have to it, the things we change are all right on one line. They're all together. They're all very easy to update in. And later, if we decided to make another change, we have one place to change it, right? So here it's going through everything. We have one place right in here to change it, not all the different places.
Yeah, exactly. And let's say we were actually adding to the sleep value in one of them. We could also use byref to like update that. And so, yeah, there's a lot of ways of utilizing the great stuff in this. And let's say you had a value of a variable outside of the functions. You have x, but you also have y, and y would perhaps be initialized as the value of 50. Let's just say it was that. And when you then got to the function, you might need a variable that was called y because it made more sense or whatever it might be. And you could do whatever you wanted to it inside the function scope. And because you didn't return it and you didn't pass it back by using byref or anything, outside of the function, the value of y would still be 50. So that's another way where if you had changed the value of y within the function, in a GoSub, if you had changed the value of y, you would have now been stuck with that for the rest of your script. And that's just a...
Yeah, so to show your point, Jackie, and I'm going to get rid of the other ones just to demonstrate it. Right up here, we set y to 100. Then we're going to jump inside the function, and here we've redefined y to be 200, and so we're going to show it here. And then notice what happens when we get back to this other one. So let me relaunch it, and I run it. So x is 200. That's because we've set it to 100 here. I should have put a message box first, I guess, to demonstrate it, but I think you guys get it. But right now, we're in here at line 15, and we're showing, look, it's 200. But when I hit OK, it comes back out. Oh, it needs to finish the function call. And then, look, y is 100. So if we happen to reuse that y variable because of the scope, it doesn't affect things outside of it. And it's a beautiful thing when you're doing a lot of calls, or I think it's with classes, right, that doing this, because they're all self-contained, and you don't have to worry about you reusing the same variable, which is easy to do.
Yeah, and it can be a lot of things, but it could also be, let's say you copy and paste advanced code, and if you just make sure to keep it inside a function or another restrained space, then you're not impacting what you did somewhere else. And then GoSubs are really prone to that, where you change some small thing and somewhere else in your code it ends up having an unknown effect.
Yeah.
Where, so you might end up debugging, I don't know for how long, on something that was actually unintended, something you didn't even think you had changed, but just because you might have copy pasted someone else's code or included something nice you found on the forum or whatever, and because they'd used a variable that had the same name as one you had used in a GoSub, just by having those in the same scope, in the global scope, then you would have bad effects.
Yeah.
And you'll save yourself a lot of hassle just by doing this very simple conversion of going from the label into the function. And
yeah, I think it's a really great point. Having said that, it's when you're new to them, just remember, because when you first start using them, it's easy to forget that the scope is local and you set a value inside here, and then you try referencing it outside the function, and it's not what you think. And at first, your first thought is functions suck, right? But it's really, it's a benefit, not a curse, right? It's just one of the things you just have to get used to. Of if you do want it to update that value outside, there's several ways you can do it, right? But it's by definition local.
I've seen quite a good amount of code where the first word within the function is global, in essence, making the function global. And it's just, you lose a lot of what the function gives you by doing that. And it's an easy fix for not knowing how many parameters to pass back and forth, or if you want to return more than a single thing and you don't realize you could use by ref, or
Stuff
you could use like an object, an array, whatever, to return multiple values. And instead of trying to return 10 different variables, you'd instead add those variable values to an array and return the array. So in essence, there's a lot of ways to both return stuff out and get stuff in without actually ruining the local scope of a function.
Well, and another really big benefit that I love about functions is, and we've talked about this a lot in other stuff, is if you truly have a function that's doing math or something or anything, you don't actually have to do what I did here. You don't have to store it. You don't have to call it and store it in X. You can reference just this in your line of code and never store the value. Just have it calculate it for you, and you don't even have to shove it into a variable, right? You can just use it, and it's gone from memory, and it's beautiful, right? It negates some of the things that Jackie was mentioning earlier, of which is one of the other coding things that I know Jackie, he loves when people just use X, Y, and Z as their variables and don't, give a long name to them, right? But it's more prone when you do that to overwriting other stuff from other people or yourself, just you forget you wrote it.
Yeah. I do see the benefit of reducing the amount of characters in a variable if you have like a time restraint, or if you want to make less strokes on the keyboard, or whatever it might be.
Yeah. Well, that's what I was going to say, was like, in Studio, when like I can start typing, let's see, where's it, like my message or sleep time, oh, look, there it is, right? So if you're using a decent editor, it doesn't really save you that much time in the typing of it. But
no, the thing I talked or thought about the most is if like you had a function afterward that would then convert your script into these one character variable names. So yeah, not necessarily obfuscation. I can't find the correct word, but just the minification of the script. So just to make the script as small as possible makes a lot of sense on web pages, JavaScript, stuff like that, where what you want to minimize is actually the amount of bytes that you send. Where it actually makes it different is if it is 1600 kilobytes or if it's 160 kilobytes. And just simply removing characters from variable names and function names and all of that stuff actually reduces that down if you have something fairly complex. So I do see where, but that code isn't really for the development.
That's a whole different, right?
Yeah.
Incidentally, what was Maestruth was he's learning how to programming. I think it's called Kotlin. It's for doing Android and iPhone development. And in the editor he was using, I think it was an Android Suite developer tool. It was interesting. It will check, and I think Maestruth at some point might try to incorporate it. But if you like assigned X up here, but you never use it, it will change the color to let you know, hey, you've set a value here, but you never once referenced it, right? And I thought that was an interesting thing for the editor to help you understand. You may not need to have set this value, because why store a value if you never actually use it anywhere? It's you don't need it.
I'm just asking because I've never used it, but does warn tell you that? Do you know that?
I don't know. I know. Jean he tried using, if I remember right, warn at one point for doing some stuff. I must really like tacos because that's like my go-to word. Oh wait a minute. Now does it? I don't recall. How does it pop up?
Yeah, I here I don't really remember what warn does. It's not something I've used, so I haven't really read the documentation on warn. I just have that idea that it will warn you if you do something that isn't maybe not best practice, but if you're doing something that's I'm actually lost for what to say it would warn you about, but I did believe it would warn you if you had variables that wasn't initialized, but that might be if you're doing math on a variable that you hadn't given a if you had used x to pass it to the function without actually having defined x as 0. I think that's one of the things it warns you about. So just warn would enable all kinds of warnings.
Right.
And it shows them in a message box, it seems. And if you go back to the script and just remove the x equals 0, that should be enough to give you a warning. You got a warning.
Yeah, and it as far as I can tell, it disappeared.
Yeah, you don't have any hotkeys anymore, right? So that script isn't persistent. So here you can see you have a global variable that has not been assigned a value. So it's kind of warning you that you're using something without initializing it. So, and it's stuff like that that warning is due.
Yeah, I saw John said, when a variable is read without having previously been assigned a value, or initialized. Thanks, John.
Okay.
Anyway, that was a little off topic. I thought it was kind of cool just to, if you realize, like, wait a minute, there's some extra stuff here I don't need. But yeah, all right. Let's so we're more than halfway through our time. Let's switch over to notifications. Yay!
This one, yay! I'm loving it already. Yeah.
Exit out of the script. So before you start, Jackie, so just so I'll clarify, this one is really, to me, it's really cool. It will update. I don't know what to call this. Your program, like in the taskbar, it'll update the GUI, and you can tell it what percent to fill this thing, like kind of like a status bar update bar, right? So I use it when I'm running loops in the background. I can have it notify. I can look at the taskbar and see where I am without having to switch to the script. Okay.
So could you run it just as a test to show it?
Absolutely. So notice, and right here, so we're at 25%. Notice it right here, and then at 50, and it's halfway there, then 75, and then 100.
And these incentments could just as easily be 1% incentments or whatever, and you didn't need to show them in a message box. But yeah, from what I'm seeing here, you have the first variable where you have set 4 lines with
Right.
different words on them. And I'd say maybe I should have some control.
Oh, sure.
Yeah.
See, I'm looking. Oh, there we go. That is on that toolbar. Okay.
I'll just do like so. Like,
I think I'll have to run it for you now.
you'll probably have to run it, or I could do it from
Still,
the taskbar or whatever.
well,
Could
we
probably
should get rid of those.
Okay, so this is the variable that holds 4 lines, and this line here, the one marked there, all it's actually doing is looping over the content of this variable. So you're using string split to split the variable, this one, that's that one, on the new line characters. You're ignoring any return characters, but that's fine. That object that this one creates, or I think it's an array actually, it creates, is stored in the variable loop object. So the stuff over here is actually the stuff that is the for loop. The rest of this stuff over there, oh, I actually ruined it. That's a function call. It's doing something somewhere else. But the only things that are really important are these first parts here. So for I in row or row in loop object. So for index object row in loop object. I think I'll actually do stuff like this just to kind of give a better overview of what's going on. Then this line here, you're actually calling your taskbar process. This is the function that's open down here. I'll break it out into the parameters that you have, just to kind of give a better idea of what's going on. It has 3 parameters that are passed to it. So the first one, oh, I'm actually just making sure here. So the first one here is I. That's the index. It will hold a simple number. It would be 1 for the first value, 2 for the second, 3. And apparently here you've used the same words. So it's okay. And then you're using the max index, which in this case would be 4. So you're taking I, you're dividing it by the full number of values in this variable, which is 4. There are 4 lines in this one. And thereby you are getting quarter at a time, 25%. And your time, or you're then multiplying it by 100 to make it into a percentage, which is fine. And on the next parameter, this one, the state, you're passing a P. Right now, I'm not sure what the P stands for, but
you can see in the end of the next line. No, the very next line.
The P is yellow. So that's apparently the color it will
the shade
end up having. Okay, fair enough. We'll get to that when we actually get to the function.
Yeah, good call.
And on this one, you're actually looking for if a window exists, and you're looking for if an AutoHotkey GUI exists. And in this case, this would be the script's own window. That would be normally what it found. To me, it's a bit weird because if you had multiple AutoHotkey scripts running, it would have a chance of actually finding another AutoHotkey window, but it would then return this one, when exist, actually returns the ID of a window, the H window ID. We're not seeing that, but it could just as easily be like so if we had a need for this value later.
Mhm.
But in this case, it's just like so. That's actually this one single call to the function. Pretty standard. It's 3 parameters, as it actually asks for 3 parameters. And then you have the message box actually telling you what ended up happening up here. It's telling you the value of that object row, which would be the word 1, the word 2, the word 3, the word 4. That's then in row. And you're actually doing the exact same math right here as you are in the first parameter up here. So this line down here isn't using any kind of return the value from your function or anything. It's just actually using what you did up here. Just to kind of say that this one and this one are totally separate. They're not interacting with each other's values in any way. So when you call this taskbar process, the thread moves to this line in the script, where the function would then first initialize all of its static values. Pretty straightforward. S0 would be 0, Si would be 1, Sn would be 2, so on and so forth. And if TBL, the value, hasn't been filled before, it starts blank. It's a static value. So the first time taskbar process is called, it would be blank. There wouldn't be anything in it. So this if here would be true because it says if not this. So only the first time taskbar process is called is this block here happening. And within this block, we then have comma initialize. Here it says creates a taskbar list object with taskbar list 3 interface. To me, I'm not sure it's actually doing that, because when I look down here on this function, comma initialize function here, what it's actually doing is it has a static value, it has a parameter that could be passed, but it's what's that called? It's when it has this, it's a predefined. I'm losing the word for that, but
the default value.
Default value, exactly. It has a default value of blank.
Why?
So,
wait, sorry, can we stop on that? Because why would you give something a default value of nothing? That doesn't make sense to me.
It makes sense in a lot of weird ways. Here you're actually setting it as a blank string, I'd say. So you are in essence initializing that with some kind of something. I think AutoHotkey does it already, so it's probably someone who's used to making sure this is done. That's my guess, but it's good practice, I'd say.
Yeah, and I get just to follow up though, it could be if we weren't in this example, but you were using it before and then you didn't pass something, you want to have it blanket out, right? So I can see how you might want to do that.
Yeah, I'd say it's probably good practice just to be sure it isn't. If let's say you had made it static at one point or something else, the function was global, or you had passed something back and forth, whatever you had done, if you called this in a blank way up here without passing anything, what you'd wish for it to mean was for BUN to be blank. That's That's kind of what.
In earlier, you mentioned up above on line 22 that we were defining these things are the static values. Just the biggest thing for me when you say that means when the first time they're called, they're going to have they're going to keep the value. That when they come back, it'll save that value, right? That
I'm unsure
variable
exactly
last value.
when. Yeah, I'd say I do believe that static values are initialized when the script starts. So these variables here would have these values as soon as the script is started, even before the function is actually called. So, and that's again if you had other global scopes and stuff like that. But for the first call, that would be the values that they had.
But what I meant was in between calls, the memory will actually stay for that variable.
Yeah,
Right.
yeah.
That's the difference. That's why you define it as static. Or that's
Yeah,
one.
because yeah, exactly. The first time you get there, it would have a 1. If I then changed it within the first call to a 2, on the next call, it would be a 2.
Yep.
So these static values are only actually assured to be the things you see here on the very first call. That's their initial value, right? Okay, I was here, somewhere down here. So this one here is then blank, you know that. It's using the AND operator, and it's checking, oh, sorry. It's when I actually try to highlight stuff, it's dragging and it's kind of hard to do.
Yeah.
And then this one here, where it's actually setting H to blank, and then it's inverting it by putting a not there. Again, it's to the limit of what I actually can keep in my head myself.
Yeah.
So it's code that's hard to really dissect in this way. I'd say for the most part here, you have 3 sections. Blah. You have here the and the or. So this one would be bitwise or, and this is the and. Here you have, because of the parentheses, something that's its own small thing. It's deeper. So even though you also have the and signs here, it only has to do with these 2 values, that and sign. It will then make this parentheses return most likely a Boland value or a 1 or 0. That's my guess. And here you have the H as blank. It needs to be really blank. And then you have this del call here. I'm looking. Apparently it's a ternary.
Yeah.
Yeah. So the first one would be if this here is successful. If that is true, then this del call value is returned is compared to the 1. Do you get what I'm saying?
Yep.
And if not, it's a 0. So if this turns out to be true, then the return value of this del call will be compared to 1. And if not, 0 will be compared to 1, meaning it will again just give you true or false.
Yeah, so ternaries, if you haven't used them, they're great, right? But they're ways to do if-then logic in one line, very concise. They look cool, but to Jackie's point, they can be hard to read, especially when they're nested like 5 levels. It gets really confusing to me.
Yeah, and this stuff here is really just a way to actually call Ole initialize. It's this they'll call here and Ole uninitialize. Those are the things that you're seeing here. So if this one manages to do, and you're able to actually initialize Ole com, then that's fine. You'll return a 1. It happened. It was successful. You could do an if on this if you wanted to. And if not, it would make sure to uninitialize it if something had gone wrong, and it would then return like a 0 or false. So that's what this is doing. It's initializing COM on a high level. We're not doing that anymore in normal AutoHotkey code because AutoHotkey takes care of initializing COM, right? You don't have to initialize the Ole interface anymore because AutoHotkey does that for you. So this is, as I said at one point, it's a legacy call that for the most part is not needed. You could probably get into very advanced situations where it might make sense for you to initialize an interface like that. But this line here is not initializing the taskbar list 3 interface. It's nowhere to be found down here.
Right.
There's nothing about that there. It's just initializing the Ole instance.
Yeah. Anyway, never mind. Go ahead. Sorry.
Okay. So that's that line. This one, the next one, that is the one that's actually initializing or creating the taskbar list 3 interface and taskbar list object. So it's using Ole, which we just initialized down here, to co-create an instance of the interface, right? And it's using these GUID. Those are non-human readable interface numbers. They're great if you can remember them. No, somewhere online you could get a humanly readable name for these.
Yeah. But it's a unique ID for a given program or something, right?
Yeah, in this case, I'd say this one here would probably be for the task by list object, and the one further down the line out here is probably for the taskbar list interface. This one down here. That's a possibility. I couldn't tell you which was which because I don't know them. But that's what we're really doing here. We're using an advanced del call to create the taskbar list object and the taskbar list 3 interface.
Hold on 1 second here. I just realized with you controlling my thing. Okay, I just want to make sure no one was asking questions that I couldn't see because the chat was out of the way. Sorry.
Yeah. So a fairly advanced del call line here. Yeah. With a good amount of different input. You could, if you wanted to do the same thing, copy this line into your script and it should work. These numbers can change from Windows version to Windows version, so it should work, but you can't be 100% sure. Microsoft is pretty good at keeping backwards compatibility, but still. And all of it is an if. If this fails, this call to create the taskbar list object with the taskbar list 3 interface, you will be notified with a message box telling you so. And as soon as you click the message box, it will exit out of the script because it has no reason to continue. So someone meant that an error with creating this is fatal enough to just exit out of the script. I'm not sure that would be a normal way of handling an error like this. If you wanted to update the taskbar within a major script, you might not want the entire script to actually fail if it was unable to update the taskbar. Do you get what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
It's okay to have in a test script like this one, but normally that's probably too harsh on an error.
I think it's a very valid point. Yeah.
Here is if the Windows ID, the HWND is blank. That's also a way of saying blank. Newer scripts might have it like this instead, but it's in essence the same. And if it's blank, it will use the last found window. That's what WinExist blank does. It will just use the last found window. And that's something that Windows keeps track of, what was the last found window. And it will just return that. And I did see a lot of reading and writing about last found windows and using that to some effect, but to me it's often very unreliable to use something like that, because the last found window could be changed by another process or by another script or by another thing. So just relying on finding the last, that's fair enough. If I'm just going on to next. So now you've actually set a value to this unique window ID. If, and here we have this variable PCT percentage, which could be, do we have that anywhere? Yeah, we are actually passing that in. That's what we're calculating here, the percentage. If percentage is not a number, then fill the state variable with the same, whatever people put into percentage, and make percentage blank. Right? So if someone accidentally passes in, like say the number, the word 4, instead of actually the number 4, then this one acts, because then percentage wouldn't be an actual number, but a word. So it's guessing that the word would be like P. It's just guessing. It's a way to make the function not fail if someone does something incorrectly, so to speak, or if the one who wrote this initially had an idea of being able to just pass in like a weird word and get it to still act.
Yeah, that's weird.
Okay. Yeah. Else, if percentage is 0 and the state is blank, then set state to 0 and percentage to blank. So it's kind of switching them around, which might make more sense down below. So if state is either 0, I, N, E, or P, then this call is made. If, on the other hand, percentage, no, it will do this if either of those, so this one doesn't have anything to do with that. So here it's making a del call to, and now it gets really funny. No, but it's making a, do you remember we in the other one had like the virtual table where it's actually a structure within memory where it's getting a value. So
Yeah.
numGet is looking into a specific memory location for a number. It's trying to get a number from a place in memory. And this numGet is doing the same thing, going to somewhere in memory to get a number. So what these two in essence is doing is that TBL, the one that didn't have any value up here, but that is set probably within this line somewhere. Let's see if we can find it. There, it's there at the end. This one here will, when this happens, will probably get a pointer. So a pointer would be a long number telling the computer where in memory to look. It's saying, oh, I'm pointing to this address over here.
Mm-hmm.
And then we use that value here. We add a 0 to it just to make sure it's a number. Mm. By adding 0 to it, we're making sure that AutoHotkey understands that this collective here is a number. We're making sure that it's acted on as a number. numGet will then go to that numbered address in memory, grab whatever that address has, it has a value, tag that, bring it back, and use that for the other numGet. And it will add 40 to it. Then you're thinking, why would it add 40? Because the first number is telling us where the top of the table is. And then by adding 40, we're going, 40 rows down, and then grabbing that number down there. So this here is actually grabbing the 40th thing, or
after
the thing by adding 40 memory places, or whatever you call those, bytes or whatever.
Right.
And it's using the same pointer again to say this is the one, and it's using the unique window ID it got up here, and it's using S, so S here with a dynamic state, so S0, SI, SN, SE, SP. In our case, it would be SP, and thereby this would become an 8. So what we're passing in here is something from the 40th place in the memory table used on the table that we got returned from this line up here, with that specific window that we got there, and we're doing whatever the 8th thing is. In this one, it is set process state. That's what this del call is doing, or what all these different function calls here are doing. It's setting the state. It's setting the set process state. And we know from up here that apparently that has to do with the color of the state. So that's the color that it will get over here. And that's what the 8 is. The 8th state color is apparently yellow. Okay, and on the next one, we need to set the percentage that is colored on this one over here. And we're doing the exact same thing on the beginning here, but the set process value function is at the 36th place, where the set process state was at the 40th place. This one down here is at the 36th place in the memory table. We're passing still the table. We're passing in the window unique ID. We're then taking the percentage and multiplying it by 10. who knows? I don't have the needed insight, but it might be because the max here is set to 1,000. So it's made into thousands, and by timing the percentage with 10 or multiplying it by 10, 25% then becomes 250 enchantments within the max of 1,000 being 25% of 1,000. So it's just, if this has instead said 100, then you could probably remove that part. That's my guess, and it could be interesting if we ran it and if it still looked like the correct percentage over here. Could you run it for me, Joe?
Yeah, looks good.
So it's just a matter of making the percentages over here even more precise, or making it able to show, like, instead of a percentage, it would be able to show the one that's even lower than that. That would be what to have. What's the term for that?
The decimal place, you mean? A
Yeah,
fraction of it. Yeah.
You have, like, when you actually write it, you do it like 0/0. That's percentage. To know the sign. I'm not sure if I have the actual. Yeah, this one.
Yeah.
It's just the one that I'm trying to make. But you also have one that looks like with 2 zeros.
Oh.
That would be in thousands instead.
Oh, okay.
So, and no, doesn't matter.
Yeah, I get your point.
So, but yeah, you can keep the multiply by 10 and keep this as 1,000. It will only make it able to make it even more precise enchantments. So you could
increments,
make it increments. Yeah, it would be able to color in 1,000 parts of this at a time. So if you were like updating it every millisecond within it would look like a much more smooth process. But yeah.
I should have thought about that when I did that top part and just said loop to a 500 and have a little sleep in there, right? We didn't need to loop over a for loop, but it's just, that was my example I had. But we didn't. Anyway, it was still a good thing to go over. But yeah, that's interesting.
And that's actually this script.
So I have a couple questions for you. I'm surprised on in between line 30 through, it looks like 35-ish, up above or somewhere else, we saw them using ternaries for doing a lot of stuff, right?
Yeah.
But on the 30 through 35, like, it seems to me they could have used ternaries and simplified some of that, and yet they didn't. It seemed surprising. Not that I care. It just was weird.
Yeah. But again, I'm not sure if all of this has been written by the same person.
Oh, good point.
And sometimes ternary is used in places where it does make a little bit of sense, and then in other places where it really doesn't make any sense. This one has probably all of these bitwise ands and ors and stuff like that, and the ternary to make it look small. It is actually doing a good amount of comparisons, but just to make it more condensed, you do all of these things this way, but you could just as well have made them into an if-else structure that would then end with either returning a 0 or a 1. This one is just, it might give a small speed boost. I did see some benchmarking on that at some point, but it shouldn't be really noticeable when it's something that you only do once.
Yep.
You should only initialize it once, right, within your script. So when you've done it once, it might not really matter if it does it within 6 milliseconds or in 7 or 8. It's like,
right, because it's one time.
Yeah, and that's the gain that you might be lucky to get by using these condensing ways of doing it. And it's not something that AutoHotkey is built to optimize, but I think it's the C++ conversion thing that is doing something. Yeah, I'm not sure. I wasn't the one doing it.
Yeah.
I just read.
And then my second question was, you had mentioned like the fact it's initializing COM and using it, and we don't have to do it in the webinar. I was just curious, how would one come about looking at this with fresh eyes, knowing that COM can be directly connected to with AutoHotkey L? Like, where would you know where you'd even start? Like, what do you start thinking about? Is it that you can connect to certain things in the DLL call straight away? Where would you start looking at that to update it?
Yeah, I'm just thinking if I had something open for my own sake that I could just quickly point to. I'm looking on my own screen.
I'm going to click the link while you're talking. Because
Fair
Chris
enough.
shared a link to the CLS IDs, I think it's the big list that is published in the help of them. So you can see there's a lot of these that are built, and these go across all, well, I'm sure it's probably even XP, Windows 7, Windows 8, Windows 10, but from memory, you can also, each program can have its own too, and that may or may not be available on the given computer that you're using, right? But I think you can go in and maybe Jean, if he's still on, can confirm this. I think you can go create your own for your program and define it and get a unique ID given to your program, and then when computers have installed it, it will know what that number is and how to use it, if I remember right.
I'm still looking on my end here to see, because I had a script I made recently where it could be seen as a direct, very similar to what's going on in the one that we just looked at. But Google ain't returning it when I'm trying to search it. So right now I'm looking for an easy way to look at my own posts, which is just not something I usually look for. Show your posts there. So let's see, what do I have? That's the one there. Okay. That's the one where I made it work. Okay. What did I call this? So nice. Okay, what are you clicking around? Are you doing stuff, Joe?
No, you can
you show something on your end here?
Yeah, go ahead. Share your screen.
No, I'll just take over yours.
Okay.
Or I'm still controlling yours, right?
Yeah.
I do believe so. So something with hotkey. What was it? Can move. Just looking. Can move desktop. Can view move desktop? Okay. So this one, I'm loving the style on the form that you're going with, Joe. Let's take the last one where I actually managed to solve it, and expanding the view here. And instead of maybe, go with that one. And Joe, you had this one. I'll open up a new one. just to kind of have this here, right?
Mhm.
So okay. So what I have here is a script made for moving a window from one virtual desktop to another. And as you can see here, making the virtual desktop manager interface, I simply COM object create and use these GUIDs as they are presented here. Like we had in, I'm looking
Yeah.
for, was it this one?
Yes. Notifications.
Notifications.
Yeah.
So just like we had here,
Yeah.
where it's co-creating instance, just by knowing that it will call that automatically by making a COM object create, I can simply pass in those two. And I'm doing that in multiple places. And of course, there's more advanced stuff like querying and interface and stuff like that. But it's just to kind of show that
Yeah.
instead of COM initializing, then COM co-create instance. And so this single function call will now do those things prior to you trying. So you don't need that extra. You can simply take the.
I've seen COM object create before, but how is it taking two CLS IDs? I thought it usually had like one.
You can see here the CLS ID and the IID. In this case, I'm passing in both. Some cases, one is all that you need, and sometimes it's even the same.
Huh.
So it really does depend on what you're doing.
Okay.
As you can see here where I'm querying in a specific interface, I'm actually passing the same SID and the same IID. And I'm at a loss for why that can be the case. I'm not the right one to explain that. And a lot of this code is trial and error for me, and I got a good amount of help on the forum to make this happen. One of the things that we looked at today on the notification one was this here, the numget structure. And over here, I was using the V table. But when actually looking, the function is down here. The V table, all that it's actually doing is the numget. So instead of writing numget and making it all look even weirder, I've just put it into a function here and timing it with the pointer size. But
which is a nice thing about functions as well, right? You can wrap stuff that you don't necessarily understand, and you figure it out once in the terms you like, and then it's easy. Just here are the parameters I change, right?
And it cleans up my code quite nicely. Instead of having numget plus something numget I application view collection something 3 times 40 times 60 times 11 times. So this here, just this part here, would look way more cluttered if I had to write those numgets on each line. So yeah, it was just kind of to show what the difference of the old way of doing the COM, where you would have to both initialize and then do the actual del call. Those two have now been incorporated into the COM object create.
Interesting, yeah. At least, I mean, like you said, it doesn't solve it, but it at least points you in the right direction, right, to understand the differences.
Yeah.
Awesome. All right, well, actually, we're way past our normal breaking time. So did anybody have any questions on this? Does anyone have, let's leave it at that. Was there any questions on this topic alone of what we covered in here? And There was some good, interesting stuff. And then if not, does anyone have anything they're having trouble working with that they want some help on? If not, I'm gonna start singing. So I'm just threatening.
Just to do something. Just. Oh.
Yeah, baryonic functions. Yeah, we could definitely cover that. I mean, they're very cool. It allows for, you know how we were adding the parameters. Let's go back up to here. So this is, my first parameter, second, third. It doesn't matter, right? And let's put it into a function. But what if you didn't know how many parameters you were going to have, right? And that's what Jean mentioned was a baryonic function allows you to, and you can combine them, right? If I remember right, Jackie, you can have, but everything to the left has to be given, and then you start with your baryonic, and you can have. Can you only have one, or you can have more than one? I can't remember because I would.
No, it needs to be the last one. From
because how would it know, right?
Yeah.
And I haven't done one in so long, I don't even remember. Do you put an asterisk with it?
Yeah, or asterisk. I'm unsure which I just call it a star.
Okay.
But, yeah.
And then so this would.
Let's just call this one. I can't write on your screen apparently. So
You
many.
it?
Yeah, exactly. Like that. Many.
Yeah. And that's
fine.
Let's get rid of, because we really don't even need any of these, right? But the example is it has to be to the right because you don't know how many there's going to be, so it has to be the furthest to the right.
Yeah, but you could easily enough go with var first, and then just to kind of show it off, right?
Okay.
But
keep going. Yeah, you got it. I think math is.
I don't use Baryonic functions enough.
Yeah, me either. Yeah. But they do come in super handy when you have the need. Math is usually, I think, a good example of how you can add multiple things together.
Yeah, but here, depending on what we're really trying to do, but to me, something simple as like many dot max index would like tell you how many values it would have. So if I was just like showing it off, let's say we would have a return there, and we would have my function.
Jean dumped in an example in the chat, but go ahead and finish yours, and we'll.
Oh, nice. The first one would just be hello, and then I would have like I don't know, maybe it would be space, and the next one. So here I'm already extending the number of parameters that I'm passing in, and the next one would be I don't know, W, and another one would be like O, and so on and so forth. And if I then ran that, I would get that I had 3 parameters passed into many. Not 3 in the function call, but 3 in many, because it just transcune them all into this many array. So you could have as many as you would like, and you could perhaps do like, you know what? We'll do it like this. For I val in. Oh, I actually need. Comma there. And I'd say end dot val, and then I'd say like message box var that end. And if I wanted to put on more here, I could also easily enough add more like so and that and there, whatever it might be, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then by running it, I'd get this because I apparently passed that in.
Oh, without the quotes, yeah.
Yeah. But yeah, that was the general idea of passing in how many parameters you wanted, doing something with those, but without knowing beforehand how many you needed, and then using that for doing whatever you had to do. But yeah, that's at least one way of doing it.
Let me grab the example that John threw into the chat here.
I actually like my example quite well.
Yeah. So let's see. So he used the join command. Oh, and params. So actually, it is in concept kind of similar to what you're doing, taking strings and bringing them all together.
Yeah, for some reason they're just making it even more complex.
Right. Yeah.
To me, a lot of times when I look at the docs currently, I've seen a few of the newest things like join here, where you put stuff in that makes it harder for your people to the language to understand what's it about. And here it's about the phonetic parts. Apparently this is, so I'm like,
sorry, the one we talked about like 2 weeks ago, the new functionality that I had sent an email and saying, hey, look, this was added. Was it not watch?
the switch.
Switch, thank you. Yeah, and that example was like really hard to follow.
Yeah, and I'm here I'm looking at this, and hopefully people looking at the phonetic functions would already understand quite a good bit of AutoHotkey and stuff like that. But it still seems like you're doing a fair amount of extra stuff here that doesn't really add to learning what phonetic functions does, because you had substring and whatever you had in that example, you had I'm not sure how many of the stuff was weird, but to me, I don't know what the correct way of doing stuff is, but I like having my functions definitions below my function calls. And that's just because when looking at it the other way around, it might be okay to know what the function does before calling it. But to me, I lose the actual call when I'm looking over code where you have a lot of functions to find before actually calling them. But it's just me. It's a matter of how flow in my head should go. It shouldn't jump from the top of the script down here and start calling functions that are then up here. It's just, to me, it needs to call them. But yeah, it's just probably doesn't matter.
Yeah, this is the one. So on my site, I have an example with of doing Baryonic functions. And so I did an example with math. So here's doing math where we're adding the things we add together, right? So we start off with total equals 0, and then we start going through and iterating over it, adding it all into total, and then doing some math and showing the total.
Yeah, and I'm especially liking your short variable names here.
Yeah, yeah. Did this years ago.
That's just the thing that one does, right?
Yeah,
It's hard to not end up doing it when you're just writing a short example.
right.
Yeah, because total, you actually save 2 characters instead of actually writing total, right? So, but when I'm looking at it, TOT, what are we talking about here, right?
Yeah,
Until I've actually read your function to end,
yeah,
I'd have a hard time of knowing what that
yeah.
stood for.
I know you're messing with, but you're absolutely right. I mean, it's one of those things. In your head, it makes sense. At least the tot for total. But yeah, what really did I save? The X and Y that that I personally like when you have like the index or the value. Like I don't like typing the something too long there. Um,
Hmm.
However, if you have a nested for loop, it does come in very handy, right? Knowing what those are.
Yeah, and I'd say recently when doing it on an array, the first one, the K here in your for loop, or I in the one I made, just makes a lot of sense because if you've read a fair amount of code, you would have seen the I used for the index
Uh-huh.
so often that the I kind of resembles that in your mind anyway.
Yeah.
And the K, if you've seen here, you've used KYX for your for loop.
Yeah. Who
And
knows how I
and
came that?
eh,
Yeah.
yeah, and in the AutoHotkey documentation, I think it's KV whatever. Oh, I can't remember what the object is actually called, or
Hmm.
array might be, but it probably wouldn't be array because array wouldn't have a key. But it is key value whatever,
Hmm.
um, and index value, and I do try to name those two something that to myself makes more sense.
Yeah.
So if I'm doing it on an object with objects in it, I might actually call value obj, just for so that I myself knows that it probably has a nested object in it, which again, it's just a matter of how you do it.
Yeah. I saw Johnson uses the K and V for value key and get value, and I often do. Um, but I don't know why I wrote this thing years ago. I don't know where the Y came from. But yeah, it's one of those. It depends on what you're doing and how it's going to be used, and sometimes if it's short enough, it's simple enough, then it shouldn't be hard to follow, right? But you don't always know how someone else might use it later, and when it's in context with everything else, it can become confusing.
Yeah, but as you know, I'm just gonna be writing on your screen
Yeah, yeah.
if I'm lucky. You remember like for, I can't even remember if I'm able to do it. Um, index. Um, it's doing weird stuff. Do you actually see an open percentage or a
Paren. Yeah,
parameter parentheses?
yeah.
Why am I wasn't able to delete it. Um, what was it we did? I so long ago. So loop, and then we had this one. That's the one. Um, item.
Oh,
Um, and then we would maybe have like element ID, whatever it might be,
yep.
dot length. Um, and this one has kind of like the same stuff that people would see um, in a for loop, but here trying to actually say what's happening, what's going on, what's being done. But what this does is, if you're doing it on the internet, you might have an HTML element, returning it by its ID, and then getting the length of how many elements were returned. Those would be put in item, and then the number in item would then be looped over. It's just a nested way of doing code. And when we then shift this into 4KV in object, why did it send that? We get used to seeing key value in object.
Mm-hmm.
But for a lot of people, 4 key value in object would make the line way more readable.
Yeah.
But we don't do it anymore, even though we might know this.
Right.
And even if it was actually more readable for us, we still save these, 6 here and 3 over here. So 9 keystrokes to not write it all out, because we see the same stuff in both lines.
You know, I find it kind of not ironic, but well, somewhere in there, because hot strings are the same darn thing too, right? When I start typing now for my stuff for my hot strings to trigger it, I don't think about the actual sentence that I'm triggering. I think about the 3-letter abbreviation, and I can hit it and it dumps in, what everyone else needs to see, right?
Mm-hmm.
But it's just that, like you said, the more you get used to something, the more familiar you are with it, then you're like, why is there all this extra stuff? I don't need this. Well, you don't, but someone else, new to it might.
Yeah. Yeah, and I'd say AutoHotkey is probably one of the languages that needs to stay at a level where new people have a chance of coming in, because that's kind of the niche that we have. If we move too far away from readability, not that I'm saying that we have the most readable language or anything, but just as a matter of community, or if we don't kind of keep that trend going with making people able to read old code, then we'll have the same issue as you had when you started, Joe, with having some very, very hard to read del calls and all of that to do all of the COM. And then over here, the new version, L, that had all of the easiness and all of the stuff removed. And it made the community quite quickly, however quickly it went, move over into that.
Mm-hmm.
And we now have a market where there are so many tools to automate and so many languages and all of that stuff that something like this can actually end up being important. Mm-hmm. Making readable code that others can learn from. So, yeah. You're writing in the chat, apparently.
Oh, Jean mentioned he likes strong, long variable names. And I was just chiming in that I knew I like them too. I just don't do them. I know you actually do write them, but I annotate more to help. So I think if you're doing one or the other, you're probably okay. But you got to pick something to help it make it easier.
Yeah, I'd say if people can write it out for themselves and read it afterwards the way they made it, and of course we looked at some very complex stuff today, and the reason that I take a script like this and actually keep reusing the word virtual desktop manager internal is because, to me, it makes it way easier to follow. I don't need to use these very long. I could just as easily write IVDM and use those. But when doing this, I have colleagues that do it all the time. When I tell them, oh, you made a typo there, or no, it should be iVirtual Desktop Manager, they would go in, delete the entire line, and then manually type it out again. Where I would copy the line above in its
Yeah.
entirety, and then just change those two letters, if that was what. So it's just, some people just do it. They just type it. And of course, if that's the way you do it, you would have a way easier time of just writing a K and an I and a V and stuff like
Yeah.
that.
Yeah.
Whereas compared to me, where I would immediately opt for copying it from here to there. I
Well,
wouldn't even contemplate of writing it out.
right. Well, or you have a good editor that will pull it up for you as you're
Yeah,
typing.
yeah, yeah. Lots of
Yeah.
helpful tools of doing it, but just the aspect of, I would really never think about writing that out if I already had it in writing.
Yeah.
If I had any chance of getting that without writing it, I would copy it. That's a matter of fact. I don't like typing on the keyboard if I don't have
Oh,
to.
as a general rule, I tell people copy and paste and almost never write anything. Copy and paste everything you can. I saw Geek Dude said he had some projects where the style guides strictly forbade abbreviation. That's interesting. You know, it's interesting. You could actually write a script looking for short words and flagging them or something, right? That'd be funny.
Yeah.
Awesome. Well, unless anyone else has any other questions, I think we never split up the time, so it's going to be a long recording, but that's all right. But thanks, Jackie, for walking through that. It's pretty
Absolutely.
interesting. And I don't think I actually mentioned it, but in this version, if you do go looking for this version of the taskbar progress, I think it's actually called set taskbar progress in the forum. It didn't have these two functions in it. Those were in the COM library, and so I went into the COM library and pulled them into here, and that way this is this will work on its own. Oops, let me do that. This right here can go inside your script and it'll work fine, because the COM library is pretty darn big, and I say big, but it's not that big. But it would have really made this really confusing. So I brought it in here, so it was easier. But don't go looking for this with these in it, because these two functions won't be in it, unfortunately. Awesome. Well, thanks everyone. Jackie and I were talking about maybe changing the kind of webinar and changing it more into like a, hey, let's come and hang out instead of having a topic, and maybe we do just like we did. We'll pick a script to work through, or see if anyone has anything. But we're kind of out of topics to be covering and maybe we'll every once in a while have a topic we cover, but just to FYI. So that's probably coming here soon.
Yeah.
All right, everyone. Thank you. And we'll see you, well, maybe see you next month.
Yeah, absolutely. And if anybody actually does want to work through some code they've done, they'd be welcome to do that.
Yeah. Send it, a couple days early. I sprung this on Jackie, I think, last night, so he glanced at it, but having a little more time to look at it so we can be familiar with it, it helps, obviously. But cheers. Thank you.
Yeah. Bye.